Good afternoon. My name is Juan Torres, and I am with the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And thank you very much for joining us today on Beyond Government Grants, Exploring Other Financial Resources. So oftentimes when we talk about financing for businesses, the traditional models are somewhat difficult to attain by startups, rural businesses, and other non-traditional entities that might be kind of venturing out into the business world. So today we are providing a panel of experts here to provide us with information on non-traditional bank options with regards to financing projects. These are very, very smart, very good people working towards helping communities develop. So the funding experts are going to discuss a variety of different funding opportunities, strategies that are not solely dependent on government grants. Apologize for my sniffles. I got the allergies are kicking in at this very moment. So be prepared to hear some really great ideas, and each presenter will have some minutes to go through their slides, and then we'll open up the floor to everybody for any questions that you might have, and I'm sure you'll have plenty, and I know I'll have a lot of questions. So without further ado, I'm going to go through and introduce everybody, and then we'll start right away. I think Daniel's up first. Is that right? No? Back? Yeah, back. Okay. So, Daniel Gutierrez is, again, I'm going to introduce everybody first and then we'll start ahead. Daniel Gutierrez will begin. He is our New Mexico MainStreet Assistant Director, and he's going to be telling us about all the resources that are available and he's aware of through that mechanism. Bill Smith's with us here from the Santa Fe Community Foundation, and he's going to talk about impact investing and the initiative that Santa Fe Community Foundation is undertaking to try to address the needs in this area. David Hansen is ostensibly with Plummer and Hansen, and he's also here to represent the Alternative Funders Network and to tell us a little bit about what they do and what those resources are. And finally, Mr. Jose Martinez with Prestamos CPLC will talk about his loan program. So without further ado, Daniel Gutierrez, please.
Thanks, Juan. I just wanted to touch base, just because I know I'm with state government. I'm also in the economic development department, and the way our structure is we focus on downtown revitalization, but it's like through a 3-tier partnership between the state, local governments, and local nonprofits that engage together and through a partnership to revitalize downtown neighborhoods or downtowns and traditional commercial corridors. We focus on engaging people through building capacity on the local level to engage in economic development, and that's the the private kind of public sector side, but it's local community members engaging in the economic development process. We rebuild places and focus on the streetscapes, the built environment to make it an attractive place for people to want to go to, and we also focus on enhancing the entrepreneurial and creative economy. So the MainStreet program, I just have our map up here. That's kind of all the different communities we've worked in. We have 29 designated MainStreet communities. We have 2 revitalization partners that in Towson and Santa Rosa. We also have 11 arts and cultural districts. We have 4 frontier and Native American community projects that are focused on economic development projects over a 12 to 18 month period. And then we have, we've done actually 24 community projects in 22 different communities over the past 4 years. So we've I travel a lot and been very many different places throughout the state. So kind of how we're kind of structured, like I said, like through a 3-tier. We work in the Economic Development Department, but we also are licensed through the National MainStreet Center, so it's a national program that focuses on revitalization. So we have a connection with the national program. We're a program of the Economic Development Department, but we have contractual relationships with local Main Street programs, so they're 501c3s that work with that have a local government partner, and they're the ones that run our Main Street districts. So we provide services and resources to them around anywhere from architectural design services, small business development support, organizational support to develop the 501c3, and they have a service contract with the city to provide certain services around economic development to really drive that work. So what this does, it creates opportunities for us to combine resources at the state, local, and through the nonprofit, they can access other types of funding that local governments usually can't get access to. So that's kind of the gist of that. So because this is the public infrastructure conference, I was going to focus on public infrastructure projects, and because it's a huge priority for us, because we know that public infrastructure or investments in public infrastructure stimulate the private reinvestment, especially we've seen this over and over as we have a number of projects going on throughout the state, and as we focus on the streetscape, the design, private businesses are actually starting to fill those buildings that were vacant before, because there's many of our downtowns are starting to decline, especially in some of the rural communities, just through lack of investment. So our goal is to create those walkable and vibrant spaces that people want to not only come to, but that business owners and property owners want to reinvest. So, because they see the private sector or the public sector reinvesting, then they want to reinvest too, because they know that people are going to come. It is a desirable space. And so we do focus on small and large projects. Some of the larger streetscape projects can take years just to finance, and we usually try to make sure that we're phasing those out so that as we get funding, we can phase them in. But we also focus on smaller placemaking projects that people can actually just see something. People want to see some movement. They don't want to wait 5 years, especially because we work with nonprofits, and they have a board of directors that are volunteers, and they're usually working boards. They want to engage in something to keep them excited, and it's tough to just wait for the larger projects. So we try to focus on larger and smaller projects. And through that, because it is a public-private partnership, it does create ownership from community members and community buy-in. So they're not just waiting for the government or the local government to create all the opportunities. They're engaged, they're working, they're active, they're helping create that space that they want to see. So one of our larger projects, this is in Raton. It's one of our Great Blocks projects. This is one of our larger. Our whole idea is to catalyze 2 to 3 block area, because if many of our downtowns are too large to really invest in the whole thing at one time. But if we start on a smaller scale, really focus in, and then kind of build from there out. That's been kind of one of our plans. So what we do as the state entity, we work with landscape architects, engineers to actually create the construction documents, which this is Raton's historic First Street. And as you can see, some of the sidewalks are in really bad shape. It's not or at least it wasn't before we started, a very inviting place to be, or people wanting to invest their businesses in. They've done a lot of work over the last few years. They were our first Great Block project, and I think total, it was for 3 blocks, and the total cost was $1.2 million. But we're working we don't have all that money. I think we got about half in there. They just started construction, and it was combined with some other work with a multimodal center over there. But what we were able to do is to combine state resources through our capital outlay set aside, some EDA funding, some local funding, some DOT TAP funding, as well as some nonprofit funding to pull a whole package together to really move this project forward. And without all three of those, it would have been tough for some of our smaller communities, especially to move forward. Here's another great blocks project in Las Vegas on Railroad Avenue. They have a lot of things going on. The Castaneda Hotel, one of the old Harvey houses, is in the process of being upgraded and hopefully open pretty soon. This work, the construction documents are out. We're actually seeking funding now. I know they did get $20,000 to start a smaller project as part of this, and kind of the whole idea is we like to phase it out. You know, it may take a while to get both these blocks, all three blocks done, but we can start on smaller projects with some seed funding, like $20,000 to really start doing some community build projects, and that's kind of what we're working on right now. This is a smaller project. This is Mountain Air. They're part of one of our frontier communities, and they had an empty lot between the Schaefer Hotel and there's a Salinas visitor center, monument visitor center there. So you got a lot of traffic going through there for certain things, but nobody was going to downtown. So the idea is they wanted to start capturing people to get out of their cars and stop, walk to the downtown, walk to these other spaces. So when they applied to do a economic development project, they really focused in on an empty lot that was right in the middle of everything, just to create a space to get people out of their cars and walk back and forth. And I think we started this, as the MainStreet program, we provided the landscape architect that did the conceptual designs, but we focused, instead of a larger infrastructure project, this was a lot that was owned by the town. We really focused in on a community build. So they had, I think, up to 60 volunteers at one point that were really, there's two gentlemen that made the gateway sign. You see other folks laying out the crusher fine for the plaza area. This project's still ongoing, and I think we started off with $5,000 from the New Mexico Resiliency Alliance and $15,000 grant that we worked with them to get from the New Mexico Gas, and we turned an empty lot into a really great space. And again, that's what we loved about this project, because they're our frontier community projects are different than our MainStreet. MainStreet, we focus on a district. It's ongoing. Frontier projects are 12 to 18 months, but what's great about this one is that they started, and that was 2 years ago, and they're still going. We're just building local capacity to actually just keep doing it themselves, and we're still engaged with them. But the town was part of it as well, because one, it was town property, but they were also providing in-kind services around with water, some of the cleanup, and again, it's an ongoing project. This is another one in South Valley. South Valley has a MainStreet program, but it's a county program. They had this park, Dolores Huerta Gateway Park, that wasn't necessarily, I mean, they put a lot of money into it, but it wasn't really inviting. There was no shade. They were trying to make it more of a community space for the farmers market and other. It's kind of right there in the center of the district. So when we worked with them to come up with some conceptual designs, they're a nonprofit, so they can go after different types of funding. I know we're in the process of going through, they applied for some state capital outlay through the MainStreet program. They got $10,000 from the Albuquerque Community Foundation, and that's the local MainStreet program. They got $20,000 from an AARP grant, and we provided the assistance, the technical assistance around developing the design and holding the community process to make sure they had feedback from the community member to make it the space that they wanted it to be. And this is just another one, and I'm just showing you some smaller projects because these are things that can really get done on the local level. I mean, I know some of the larger infrastructure projects, you have to, it's really going to be the city driving them with other partners, but some of these smaller ones are projects that local community members working with nonprofits and the city can actually drive. And so this one's actually in Lovington, Main Street, and they're in the process. picture. I didn't have a before one. They're in the process. It's all torn up now. But they, it was just a parking lot, and they were, it's part of their creating Lovington Green Spaces program. So they're trying to create more spaces, interactive spaces where young kids can actually get involved, do things. They can bring families. And this was started off with a, again, a $5,000 New Mexico Resiliency Alliance grant, but they combined that with, I think the Resiliency Alliance got another $4,000, I think, to expand the scope. They got money from the city as a match. The city provided in-kind services. They have a lot of volunteers that are doing a lot of the work. And they're actually in the process. Lovington MainStreet donated some money. They did some fundraising. And they're also in the process of working with a couple of foundations in the area to provide more funding to finish some of the amenities for the park. And that's it. I think my main point was just that, you know, by working with local community members, nonprofits, you can kind of expand your reach as local governments in terms of accessing different resources and going through that community process to really get community buy-in. Thanks.
And as I mentioned, we'll take questions at the end, so we'll go through the presentations. And I'm not sure which Santa Fe community, but Bill.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Smith. I'm the president and CEO at the Santa Fe Community Foundation up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And first, thank you for the invite to come and talk to you a little bit about the work we're doing in impact investing. And I'm grateful to follow Daniel because I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply into one of the projects that he highlighted, which is what's going on up in Las Vegas. And it's just a nice way for me to highlight that so many of these pieces fit together, even when we may not be intentionally trying to make that happen. So first slide. So a little bit about the foundation. So we were founded in 1981. So was the Albuquerque Community Foundation. For those of you who may know, we were founded a couple days apart by a lot of the same people, just coincidentally. We're devoted to building healthy and vital communities in the northern New Mexico area. We have a traditional focus on Santa Fe and 6 other northern New Mexico counties, but a number of our initiatives, including our impact investing work, which I'm going to talk about today, has a statewide focus, and we have strategic priorities across the state. So even though we're based in Santa Fe, our reach has gone beyond the city and the county for a number of years. We are currently about $85 million in assets. I haven't looked at the stock market this week because it's a little too heartbreaking for me to look. And we do about $8 million in grant making each year. A bunch of that is the donor advised fund holders that we work with at our own foundation, but also some funds of our own. We currently hold about 450 funds of various type. About 140 of those are donor advised fund holders who do their philanthropy with and through us. We have 5 areas of impact. Most community foundations across the country are built on what are called fields of interest. We underwent a new strategic framework recently where we embraced equity and addressing inequity in our communities as a driver for what we're doing, and really investing in people, these places, and our power to make a difference. So we changed our fields of interest to what we're calling areas of impact, and I won't go through them except to say that they're listed there. What is impact investing? Do I need to go into this with terribly much depth? Who knows what impact investing is in the audience? All right, let me spend some time then. So essentially, the way that I describe it in layman's terms is we've decided at our foundation to take a bit of our assets off of investments on Wall Street and invest them on Main Street, or whatever street we're talking about. There's a couple key principles associated with that. The first is we are willing to take a lower return, financial return, on those types of investments if indeed there's other payoffs. So for example, economic development, building a sense of community, creating jobs, however we define it, we're willing to take 3 to 4%, sometimes 2%, as opposed to the 11% we got last year, because as a community foundation, we're interested in building our power to do grant making, but we're also really interested in sort of the broader social impact returns on the work that we're doing. Another key operating principle is we're willing to engage in more risk. So I didn't bring you the slide, but we have a pretty complex grid where we're trying to assess the risk in our impact investments. But some of them are quite high risks and would not be eligible for ordinary financing, including through the commercial lenders that traditionally do this work in northern New Mexico and in Santa Fe. And I would say the third piece is we're willing to look at funky things, which may be risky, may not be risky, but we're willing to look at really funky things that might not make sense if you were purely looking for financial return. For foundations like ours, and I'll talk a little bit about a broader effort because Albuquerque Community Foundation is engaged in that with us. It's really around what is our mission and what are the types of other returns that we're trying to see. But we also, and this is a trend in impact investing from both private and community foundations, we are looking for a return of principal. So it's not just a grant. We do a lot of grant making, as I said, about $8 million a year. But this is about returning the principal. And I'll talk about some of those deals. And for us, sometimes, so you know, we layer these things. So sometimes there's a grant and sometimes there's an impact investment for the same deal. And a number of our partners do that as well. It can be any access class. As it says here, we use both endowment and program funds. Again, it's just really around the mission-driven part of our work. So in 2013, our board of directors committed, I don't know why I said 5 to 10, this predates me getting there. It's either 5 or it's 10. If you're up to 10, ask for 10. So up to 10% of our own pooled assets, which at this point of that 83 million, we have about 46 in this particular asset pool. So we have, as it says down here, about 4.5 million allocated by our board for mission-driven impact investing, and we've deployed 2.1 million through 13 deals, and I'll give you a little bit more detail on that. 5 of them are in Santa Fe, 5 are in northern New Mexico, 3 are statewide, including a deal that I just signed the check for yesterday in the South Valley here in Albuquerque, and 70% are loans or loan funds, and 30% are in equity. The strategy that we're pursuing going forward, since we've done these 13 deals, is we're really looking at economic revitalization, and you'll see that in the example I'm about to use. But also in Santa Fe, we have taken on what we're calling, hopefully, a big win, which is tackling affordable housing in Santa Fe. So our board of directors has approved an additional $1 million for small impact investment in high-density building in Santa Fe. So that there's some of those affordable units that we know are sometimes out of reach. Let me just say before I mention this, we're not pretending that we're in any way competitive with our commercial lenders, and we joke with them, and I was with LA&B this morning and we were talking about this. I was presenting this at another conference. Nor are we pretending that we've got a lot of money to make things happen. What we do know is what we can do is very catalytic funding and sometimes the higher risk funding that a commercial or traditional lender might not be able to do. So what I pulled together for you here are just a couple examples of the deals that we have done, those 13 deals. When we first started our impact investing work, we thought we were only going to work through intermediaries. In a nutshell, that didn't work well because we weren't having a robust enough pipeline for us really to start deploying the type of capital that we wanted to do. So we started doing other things, including direct nonprofit loans, as well as taking equity as opposed to loans with guarantees. So some of the deals we've done are with HomeWise, Accion, the Loan Fund, RCAC. Some of our nonprofit partners have been the United Way of Santa Fe County and investing in an early childhood center. We helped finance a new truck for the Home Depot to expand their service delivery area for food security. We did a short-term bridge loan to the Santa Fe watershed, and we're doing more of these for nonprofits who may be more, whose financial model may be more based on the cash flow from government grants, which come in very specific cycles, so perhaps there's a cash flow issue. So we do very short-term bridge loans like that. Partnership for Community Action was the deal I was just telling you that we just did in the South Valley with a bunch of partners. Everyone knows what Meow Wolf is. We were an early investor in Meow Wolf. We're looking at another deal with Meow Wolf right now because it's been such an engine in Santa Fe, and now expanding into other areas for the creative economy. Mid-school math is the development of a curriculum, a STEM curriculum that we believe strongly in. It's evidence-based. That's an equity stake for us. Mora Valley Woodworking, which was a really small and very heartfelt investment in a bunch of artisans up in Mora who were trying to revitalize a very traditional woodworking. They've had their challenges there, so that deal actually has closed. And it's one of ours that we say didn't work out so well, but we would do it again because it was really around investing in Mora. And then the deal I want to talk to you a little bit more in depth about is the deal that's going on in Las Vegas with the Castaneda Hotel. So, as most things happen in New Mexico, I was out at an event and I ran into Alan Affeld, who's an entrepreneur here in New Mexico who we joke is revitalizing the Fred Harvey chain sort of single-handedly because he redid the La Posada Hotel in Winslow, Arizona, and then he started looking at the Plaza Hotel and the Castaneda Hotel in Las Vegas. When I met Alan, he was looking for figure out how to get the financing done to make this happen. And long story short, the first two things that were tried to get the financing done for for those two properties together fell through. And the key point of this is that these properties were not going to be redeveloped unless there were tax credits involved. Why? Because the Castaneda Hotel has 22 rooms, and we're spending over $7 million renovating the Castaneda Hotel. So when I talked with Alan, we had explored a number of models that were not working, and then finally he found an opportunity to have new market tax credits that were willing to be given to the project by Clearinghouse in California. But Clearinghouse made it as a condition of that someone needed to own 5% of the operating company. It couldn't simply be a sole proprietor, which was Alan and his wife. We go for it. So we said, let's talk. We are a relatively silent partner on these things. We are not interested at the Santa Fe Community Foundation in neither owning nor running hotels. It's not our model. But what we did know is that this was an incredible opportunity for us to invest in Las Vegas, and the revitalization that we see going on there, even before the Castaneda Hotel was in play. But we can see, and I don't know how many of you go up to Las Vegas or are from Las Vegas, but what's going on up there right now is extraordinary. And I know it's happening in many other parts of our state, and I think it's a really exciting time for us. So for us, that 5% stake cost $100,000. So we did a loan for $100,000. It is a personal guarantee by Alan and his wife. So for those of you who may do this, a personal guarantee isn't the best type of guarantee you can have. But we did this 5% ownership in the operating company. And it was as part of a $10.3 million capital raise for both the Castaneda and the Plaza Hotel, because the hotels are held in one operating company, which is Historic Hotels of Las Vegas. The way that we saw this was that it was a small catalytic investment, so it's back to, we don't have a lot of money, we're not pretending $100,000 can change the world, but in this instance, $100,000 was leveraged to get the $3.3 million in new market tax credits. That was a precondition for Clearinghouse doing it. So for us, it was a no-brainer. And if I could just say, one of the things that I love about my board and about my committee that helps us make these decisions is, as a funder, as a foundation, we do grant making all the time. And my foundation board said when I had them approve this deal, and this was the first deal that I championed since I became CEO, so I'm super, super proud of it. But they said, you know what, Bill, if it doesn't work and the hotels don't thrive and the revitalization of Las Vegas doesn't happen and we lose our principal, we have spent $100,000 in grant making probably less effectively than this. And I'm telling you that because I want you to feel and know the role that community foundations like ours and others who are doing impact investing approach this. It's a very, very, very different mindset. So in addition, there's about $1 million in historical tax credits, which, to update this slide, We found out just, I think last week, that the historical tax credits have been approved and certified. And for us, at the end of the day, it was about this piece at the bottom, which is the return that we're willing to see, because for us, well, I'll talk a little bit about the overall return, but for us, it was about 50 construction jobs for 2 years between the Castaneda Hotel and the Plaza, 30 jobs that are permanent at the Castaneda to run the property, and the 60 jobs that are currently at the Plaza Hotel. So for us, as a social impact investor who's invested in these types of returns and not necessarily the economic returns, this was a no-brainer for us, But let me tell you sort of what the other type of return is. So we will get, in 7 years, when the financing can be unraveled for this project, we will sell our interest back to Alan, who owns the other 95% of the historic hotels, at the valuation at which it is then. And we'll see what that looks like, but we're excited about it because it's going to be more than $100,000, because these hotels are going to thrive because we have a revitalization going on in our state. But what I haven't told you is we are a philanthropy organization. So we are taking this entire investment, as well as some additional activities in which we're engaging with Alan and through these 2 hotel properties. And in 7 years, our analysis shows that we will have $500,000 to $600,000 in a fund that we have set aside called the Greater Las Vegas Impact Fund that will rest there and do grant making to nonprofits in Las Vegas, New Mexico in perpetuity. So it was not only a no-brainer for us because of the jobs and the economic benefit it was creating, but it was also creating this environment of philanthropy, which we know is lacking in parts of our state, and it was an opportunity for us to do it. So anyway, love this project. My final slide is to share, please. Am I going too long?
No. I wanted to know, this is a happy coincidence. So, just put context into the Castaneda project, right? So,
I was going to say talk about the finance authority, but go ahead.
So the Castaneda project was turned down for the New Markets tax credit. I was part of the group that turned it down.
Remember when I said long story short? I did that.
But the reason I wanted to interject, because I think this is perfect, was that in the review of the in our role to review New Markets tax credit projects, we have an obligation not only to look at these positive impacts, but also to look at it as a cash flow business. And the economic aspect did not work. It was obvious to us from a strictly commercial standpoint, it didn't work. But it was obvious that an angel of some sort could come in and invest, be the leverage lender. And it was the thing we discussed openly, but it never occurred to us when we talked to anybody to say, why don't you guys do it? So when after the fact, when they went on, they found the president in California, they brought him here, and they involved the Santa Fe Foundation, it was like, aha! So now we have a model, I think, to think about more in the future, because we look at a lot of different projects. And again, they don't all cash flow, but they have significant community investment, community support, and they're important. So I'm really glad to see you guys do this, and I'm looking forward to tapping you in the future for other projects that may work out. So just wanted to put it in context on that particular piece. It was just a happy coincidence that I was involved in turning it down.
Thanks, Juan. No, what I mean, if I could just underscore, that's exactly why I was excited to come and talk to this group today, because this is a new model in New Mexico in many ways. So, and I'll be honest, we have made a lot of this up as we've gone along. Even though this is a practice adopted in many other jurisdictions, particularly among community foundations, and we've tried to learn best practices and bring them here to New Mexico. The Castaneda deal was brand new for us. No one else that we knew had done something like that before. My colleague at the Arizona Community Foundation was talking about them owning a hotel, and he was like, "Bill, you're crazy to do it." We did it anyway because it was the right thing to do for New Mexico. So going forward, what we decided was, okay, so we've done some cool stuff at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. Is there a way that we can take our own lessons learned so far and go beyond our 4.5 million in capital that we have to deploy to create a larger table where other philanthropists and capitalists can come to the table and sit with us and look at deals together? So I wanted to tell you that we've created, with a number of other partners, the New Mexico Impact Investing Collaborative. It's currently housed at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. These are a number of the partners that are involved at the bottom, and I'm sorry if you can't read all that, but it's a number of foundations, and then some individual philanthropists, a number of private companies, as you can see. Albuquerque Community Foundation is in here. I'm only putting those down there to indicate that it worked in our pilot project, which was we created a table that brings other capital to the table, and some of the entities sitting within the collaborative are not doing loans. They're not doing that type of investing. They are sitting there with their grant money. So I was talking about the deal that we just did with Partnerships for Community Action in the South Valley, and it was the last deal that we did through the collaborative. The pilot phase has ended. We're doing an evaluation now that's funded by the Kellogg Foundation, and we expect a relaunch of a more robust project next year. But at the end of the project, we did the exact type of deal that we wanted to do, which was there's commercial lenders in the mix, there are tax credits in the mix, there's state dollars in the mix, there's local dollars in the mix, there are grant dollars in the mix, and there's impact investing in the mix. And it was the exact type of complex financing that we were able to be part of through the Impact Investing Collaborative by just simply creating that table and allowing this amazing community center to be built. So I won't say anything more on that, except if you want more information on this, please feel free to reach out to me, and you can find my contact information on the Community Foundation's website. Thank you.
So thank you. My name is Jose Martinez. I'm the president of Presamos CDFI. So we are a subsidiary of Chicanos Por La Causa. We have an affiliate organization here that's named CPLC New Mexico, a quick growing organization. We hope to do a whole lot more in the state and have a whole lot more positive impact. I serve in the role of leading the efforts of the CDFI. We're a community development financial institution. So in short, that means that we finance deals that the banks can't touch. So in many ways, we're all the impact investing world and CDFIs. We're all working collaboratively to try to figure out, how can we serve underserved communities. Our focus. We are a Latino-based organization. We focus in states where there's high Latino population, but we serve entire communities. So as a community development lender, we are here and able to serve anywhere in the state. We were formed in 2000, and to date we've provided over $106 million in financing, and that's to a number of different sectors. Our bread and butter, we do a lot of small business lending. That's probably in terms of volume where we do most of our loans. We do a smaller amount of micro lending, which is essentially small business lending, but on a much lower dollar amount, up to $50,000. So this is a little bit of where we're at and what we offer. So on the micro and small business financing side, we can do lending up to $2 million. It's quite a range. It'll start all the way at $10,000. And we also provide new markets tax credit financing. So very much like the Finance New Mexico here, and of course Clearinghouse that was mentioned. We do the same type of financing for larger economic development projects. But we have some unique nuances to what we can do with that program as well, which I'll share going through the presentation a little bit further. And then, since this is, I wasn't sure the nature of the audience, but we have kind of a program as well where we've partnered with the USDA, and we could do the community facility financing. So that can be to local governments, nonprofit organizations, and tribal communities. So that's kind of the mix of the financing. I didn't put too much on the in the following slides on the micro and small business lending. We're not doing a whole lot of that here. That might be something where we will grow into, but we know there's groups like Acción here doing micro lending. There's other CDFIs in the state. So we will come in where it makes sense on the small business side. We've done a number of equity investments. That's something that you don't see too much of, helping smaller businesses that have the opportunity for high growth but can't support the debt, and we've been able to help them. We actually did look at the Castaneda Hotel. We were open to moving forward, and they found a great local partner. So we're glad that project was able to get off the ground. So go to the next slide. I think that for us, I think New Markets Tax Credit is something that is a big driver here in the state in terms of being able to make a significant impact here in the state. And so what this is all New Markets Tax Credit financing, a great share that's come here locally with some allocations coming from out of state. So since 2013, $220 million of New Markets allocation has come into the state. That's leveraging another $411 million from outside leverage sources, and total $632 million in terms of total project costs for these projects that have gotten off the ground. That's spread across 19 businesses, so these are pretty significant size deals, and close to 8,000 jobs, right? So that's a program that is making a dent, in the state, and one that we have to make sure that we preserve for the long run. It's always on a continuous renewal basis. It was on the just for context, it was on the cut list from the president's budget. Good thing many folks that have worked with this program and see the impact of it, we were able to get it back on and extended. So it's always on a short extension. So for our role in terms of the types of projects that we can do through this New Markets Tax Credit financing program, I just put what we're looking for and what many other community development entities, folks that are doing this New Markets financing, what we tend to look for. So there's all you have to do to find out if a community is eligible. You go and you type in New Markets Tax Credit eligibility. You'll find there's 2 or 3 mapping services that will find that. But the key to it, right, is that the difference between being eligible and being highly marketable to attract the credits is really in terms of highly distressed. So we as an entity that competes for these credits every year to be able to go out and provide this financing, we commit a high percentage to be in the highest needs communities. And so when you're looking at a potential project that could benefit from this, to the extent that is in a highly distressed community, that which has over 30% poverty, median income less than 65%, high unemployment, 1.5 times national average. If it's in a rural, non-metro county, and then there's secondary criteria as well that's related to if it's medically underserved and you're providing access to health care and providing or it's in a food desert and you're providing, it's a project for a grocery store, that type of. So these are the things that make these projects highly desirable from a new markets standpoint. The credits are incredibly competitive to compete for when we seek them from the federal government, and in order to do so, we commit to the most needed communities and the highest impact projects. So from a community impact standpoint, significant job creation, providing services to communities where those services didn't exist prior, particularly providing services to low-income communities, and that the project is, quote-unquote, shovel-ready. So these are the things that we would look for when you have projects that you're looking at, and we know there's an internal process, right, from Finance New Mexico in terms of looking at these projects. You can also seek us out and see if we can do a second look. Sometimes different CDs are looking for different things, such as the example of Clearinghouse being able to do a project that wasn't able to be done. So this is a way of getting credits from outside the state with groups that are located in different communities. I'm based out of Phoenix, but we do this work in 4 states. So something to keep in mind, and to seek outside CDEs that are doing this work as well. And I wanted to provide a couple of examples. So this is a typical type of project. This is a large project. We put $12 million of allocation into it. It had it was an over I think it was a $60-70 million total project cost. It created 600 construction jobs, 212 permanent, quality jobs that had a certain pay level that reached quality jobs and benefits. And at the end, this project will benefit from being able to convert about $2.5 million from the project into equity. So there's some debt forgiveness that takes place, even though we're not really supposed to say debt forgiveness. It's conversion of debt is what takes place, and it converts to equity. So this is a significant benefit, and oftentimes, smaller projects get left out of this type of financing. But to the extent that there's large projects that are out there in the community that has a gap in financing, this is where these credits come in, and are able to fill the gap and provide a way for that project to get done when it wouldn't otherwise. And so they're sought after because, in the end, $2.5 million of debt will go away. But because of the nature of these transactions, there's significant, accounting, legal fees, and so forth. So, go to the next slide. So we've adapted this program. We do that type of financing. That was one of our projects, but we've also adapted it to be able to do smaller dollar financing for projects that have a gap in financing as low as $600,000, and we can go up to $2 million. So we call this our loan pool program, where what we're doing is we're funding a group of deals all together. And so what we're doing is we spread the legal and accounting costs on our end, and turn it into a loan program that the community project, the business that's trying to get the financing, it's just a as close to a regular plain Jane loan as it can possibly be. So in this case, the model is a little different in the sense that 100% of the loan does get paid off in the end, but it benefits from a couple of things. Number one, it's going to be below market, well below market, for the type of risk that's taking place. So these loans for these type of projects can be 2.5%, 3.5%, and so it's access to capital, number one, particularly because no bank is able to do this particular project, or they can't do the full financing of it. And so it's accessible, it's low cost, and then it'll have an interest-only period for 7 years. It'll let this this project get off the ground for the next 7 years before they'll have to pay it back, most likely through a refinance. So this is something that this is a project that we did. We did 90% financing on this project. So you're not going to see on a commercial facility where we can get up to 90% financing, but through the subsidy that is provided in the New Markets Tax Credit programs, we're able to do that type of project. We're also able to do projects where there's just a small gap, and the bank can take it so far, but they can't do the higher loan to value. We can come in and provide that level of financing in a nice, simple, easy transaction. Again, up to $2 million. So for the smaller communities that are represented here, I have a colleague here, Roger Gonzalez, that's with CPLC New Mexico. We've been talking about how do we help further the benefits of some of these federal programs that oftentimes is not able to serve the smaller communities. And so this is one of the innovative ways that we're trying to get at it and trying to do smaller projects. And then I wanted to mention this program, particularly many of you may be familiar with the USDA community facility financing, but essentially there was significant funding that was going to go dark through at the end of the Obama administration. It was funds that were unused, and the undersecretary that was in charge of rural development for USDA found a pathway to commit the funds so that they wouldn't go away, and they were able to commit them to CDFIs across the country. So we were one of the beneficiaries of that, and we were able to secure $15 million through this program for us to be able to relend to community facility projects. So we've turned that into a product where we can do anywhere from $700,000 to $5 million in financing. This is long-term, permanent financing. We can go up to 35 years on it, and the rates are going to be a little higher than what the USDA can put out directly, and it's between 4 to 5.5% is what we're able to do with these funds. The eligibility, nonprofits, public entities, and federally recognized tribes. So we'll go ahead and flip to the next one. Obviously eligibility has to be designated rural area, 20,000 population or less. We look at priority given to persistent poverty areas or low-income communities. And then the types of projects that we're looking to finance here are healthcare facilities, hospitals, clinics, assisted living, public facilities, which we think we're probably priced too high for public government facilities, but we could do child care centers, community centers to nonprofits, museums, libraries, food banks. So for your nonprofit partners that are out there that are trying to get a community center off the ground, or trying to, we've seen where several nonprofits are trying to purchase real estate and be co-located in one location to provide services to the same community. This is the type of financing that we could provide, long-term permanent financing for these types of projects. So that's pretty much the end of my PowerPoint. I'm happy to answer any questions after, if you've got specific projects that you're looking at getting financed. So thank you.
And I see Terry McDermott's here, so if you want to corner him from USDA before you leave the room, just block the doors and you can talk to him about other products that are available. Thank you, Jose. And I really would like to see that New Markets Tax Credit Pool program in action. I've been doing New Markets for about 10 years, and so this is really the first non-traditional New Markets program I've ever seen. So I would really like to see it work here in New Mexico. And just make a plug really quickly for, we have our own loan guarantee program that we started this year. And so we are looking to synergize that with other partners, and wherever we might be able to fit in, we'll do $250,000 of a maximum $500,000 loan, so that's 50%. And basically, it's a straightforward loan guarantee. We're using repurposed state small business credit initiative dollars. We have $5 million for the program, and we have about 5 loans we've done so far. 5 guarantees we've done so far. And we break the traditional mold on economic development, so we do retail. We're focused on rural, women-owned business, veteran-owned business, anything that's got a socially relevant component. We would like to definitely partner with different entities. So without further ado, Mr. David Hansen of Plummer and Hansen is here, and he's going to talk to us about the alternative lenders market. Come on in.
Okay, I'm David Hansen. The name of my firm is Plummer Hansen Corporation. I'm a contract CFO. I do CFO work for companies that need one but don't need one full time. I also have an organization called the Alternative Funders Network, which is an informal group of people that we get together periodically to network amongst people that are funders. And we dreamt it up back in 2011, back when banks were being very difficult about making loans. And we want to get the word around. There's a lot of other ways to raise capital in the private markets outside banks. And so what I was asked to do was to address that here today, because not necessarily you're in the market for alternative funding or different kinds of funding, but that you will be working with people that may need that funding. You may have contractors, you may have service providers, people that are impacted with some of the work that these guys do. And so I was asked to address that. So really briefly, at a really high level, there's 3 kinds of funding in the private sector. There are grants, and I'm not going to say much about that because you know how grants work. Grants in the private sector are usually by large companies that offer grants to small companies for a specific purpose. The other 2, which are more important, are debt and equity. And how many of you folks have rented a car? I'll bet you all have sometime or another. All right. When you rented that car, there was 2 things that they wanted. When you went out to the desk at Hertz, they want to know they're going to get the car back, and they want to know that you could pay for the fee to rent that car, right? Imagine that debt is nothing but renting money. And so what we try to do when we talk to the alternative funders and talk to various people that are looking for money, we try to get across this. It's not rocket science. Renting money is debt. Equity is buying money. So when you go in and you try to borrow money from somebody, whether it's a bank or it's Jose's business or any other of them here I'll mention in a few minutes, there's 2 things they want. They want to know you can pay for the fee to rent that money, which is interest, and they want to know they're going to get their money back, just like the rental car wants to know they're going to get their car back. Okay, so that's all debt is. And people try to make this very mysterious, or they don't understand that. So they go into a lender and they'll say, well, you know, here's my house, you can have that if I default. They don't want your house. They want their money, and they want the interest to be paid. And that's the reason why a lot of people get turned down on debt, is because they don't understand what's being looked for. So if you walk into a lender, and if you can demonstrate that they're going to get their rental product back, and that you can pay for it, you have the cash flow to pay for it, then you'll probably get the loan. Simple as that. Types of debt suppliers or banks, which used to be the great majority of debt providers. Over the last maybe 40 years, that's diminished for a lot of reasons. Banks have brought it on themselves in some cases. Sometimes the Fed have really jumped down their throat. Some of them are publicly held and they have various standards. Some of them have different criteria for their loans. Sometimes they make their loans for socially acceptable reasons. There's all kinds of reasons now. And one of the hardest things about trying to get debt financing is finding the right provider. You know, you go to a bank and they turn you down and say, oh, well, I can't do it. It's not necessarily right anymore. There's an industry of alternative funders, and those people include credit unions. And credit unions are not necessarily set up for commercial lending, but some are. Sometimes you have to ask. There are leasing firms. There are all kinds of people around that will lease equipment. You don't necessarily have to buy equipment if you're short of cash. They can do that. There are alternative funders. Here in Albuquerque, there's West, there's the Loan Fund, we mentioned that, Axiom is a provider, and Prestamos is certainly one. There are alternative debt providers. There are what are called asset-based lenders. Those are people that will lend on things like your accounts receivable. There are also groups called factors, where they'll actually buy your invoice. If you're a seasonal company, factoring can be very good. Factoring is high interest, and it can be expensive, but for the right kind of company and the right kind of circumstance, factors can be very appropriate. There's also various companies like certified development companies where they deal in land and real estate. There are companies that, non-banks, that specialize in SBA guaranteed loans, which are perfectly appropriate to a lot of people. There are also non-finance alternative funders, and those could be suppliers. You may have vendors that are willing to pay, give you extended terms, for example. You can also have manufacturers that might floor plan. Anybody that's ever gone to a car dealership, that dealership didn't buy those cars that are sitting on that lot. They're being financed by the manufacturer. And I did mention non-bank SBA secured lenders. And there are a lot of those around, particularly if you're doing real estate. If you're interested in building a warehouse, there are a lot of people, and they are not advertised as banks, but they'll talk to you about SBA lenders. There's a couple of caveats I want to give you about lenders, debt financing. One is that lenders are not simply interested in collateral. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they walk in and they say, the lender will say, how much do you need? And they'll say, as much as I can get. And if I default, you can have my house. No, that's not the way you want to approach those guys. You want to go in there and have a specific plan. You want to walk in and tell them what will happen if it doesn't work. Years and years ago, I had a guy ask me once, what's the difference between a lieutenant and a general? Anybody know? It's because lieutenants all charge and generals plan retreats. And people like to lend to generals. They don't like lending to lieutenants. Beware of the online lenders. And if you have anybody that asks you where they can get a loan, beware. Cabbage is one of them. There's a bunch of them around. These guys that send a thing in the mail to you that says in 3 hours you can have $50,000, beware. The terms can be onerous, and you want to be very careful to get into that. I mean, I understand there are times when you're a day away from payroll and you need money, but beware, be cautious. The last one, and I run into a lot with people, is the SBA, with very few exceptions, they don't make loans. A lot of people seem to think that the SBA makes a loan. They don't. With little exception, they don't. They guarantee loans. However, just because the SBA guarantees a loan doesn't mean that loan is going to be easier to get. A bank or a lender that does SBA lending, they don't want a bad loan on their books because they'll lose their privilege of doing SBA guaranteed loans. So if somebody tells you, oh, well, the SBA, I'll go to there. No, they're not. That's not where the money comes from. The money comes from a lending source where part of that loan is guaranteed by the SBA. The other type of funding that's pretty common is called equity funding or ownership. When I use the term that debt is renting money, equity is buying money. Except instead of putting money out to buy, you're giving ownership in your company. So for a certain percentage of your company, you're taking money in. The expectation of an investor in equity is different. They don't necessarily want the money back, at least not right away. They're willing to share the risk. They're willing to put some of the ownership into your business because, for various reasons, they may like the return, they may like the idea, they may like the technology. That's what equity funding is, but it's expensive because you have to give away part of your business to get that investment put in. There are stages in equity funding. How many of you people run into somebody one time or another that told you they had a hell of an idea and all they need is $5 million? I know, laugh, you heard that, right? Okay. All right. There's stages, and there's appropriate equity funders in various stages. For startups, that's personal funds and friends and family. People that go out and start a business, and I don't care if it's a corner store or a billion-dollar technology company, it almost always starts with somebody putting up their own money, or they're tapping some friends and family to get that money started. That's what almost all of them do. Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world here, started in Albuquerque. He did not start out as a billionaire. He started out with a few bucks, Ian Paul Allen did on their own money. And they made the business go from there. That is a startup. Early stage, you usually have what they call angels, and I heard somebody mention angel funding here a little bit ago. Angels are people that are interested in the business, they're willing to put some business money into it, generally for a minority stake. But that's after the startup occurs and they get going. And then sometimes employees. The late stage could be strategic partners. You have a lot of small businesses that will partner up. That happens a lot at the labs, where smaller companies with the technology will partner up with larger companies. Here is the caveat I have on that. First of all, ideas are a dime a dozen. Will anyone have paid for it? I can't tell you how many people call me up and say, I need $5 billion because I have a really great idea. Nobody that's a serious investor is going to invest in your company just because you have a bright idea. Bright ideas exist all over the place. It's whether somebody will be willing to buy it. If you're not willing to put up your own funds in the business, don't expect somebody else to put the money in for you. Over the years, I've had many people that will come to me and say, gee, I need $1 million, and I say, how much money did you put in? And they'll say, well, my wife won't let me mortgage the house. So, well, why should they take the risk if you can't? So that's one. And here's the last one I'd like to mention. I don't know what it is, but people seem to think that venture capitalists are the source of all funds. Venture capitalists fund something like 4% of all the businesses in this country. VCs are not interested in startups. They're not interested in early stage firms, with very little exception. Now, once in a while, a VC will have somebody that will walk in that has a track record of running successful and very highly successful companies. But for the most part, venture capitalists are not interested. And that's a message I would like you to take out to the world, because I get that all the time. People say, I need $5 million. And say, well, why do you need $5 million? Well, because I heard VCs won't fund something less than that. No, that's not the way that works. So anyway, that's kind of a high level. My name's Dave Hansen. I'm terrible at PowerPoint, so I didn't even bother taking it. But that's kind of a high end. That's the kind of financing that happens in the commercial world. If you have any needs or you work with people that have any needs, I would welcome you calling me. My number is 303-478-7929. I moved here to New Mexico about 3 years ago from Denver. That's why I have 303. And I really appreciate your listening to me, and thank you.
Thank you. So quite a range of information. I open it up to the floor. Any questions that we have for our panelists here? I would just make a side comment that this is like the third time I've heard about the online. I'm aware of it, but it's not anything I've ever looked into. And so I've heard 3 times in this last few days how onerous it is. So I would just double the caution on that. So Bill, for the Santa Fe Community Foundation, in terms of your program, you're just getting it started. What's next? You mentioned something in South Valley. Is there an area of focus that you guys are doing? I know I've had some conversations with Juhi at your office. We're trying to figure out ways that we in the government can partner with the private sector. We're very much interested in social impacting investing and how that might fit into some kind of a rubric that might include all of our programs as well. So just wanted to open it up and say, any focus or any areas of what are you guys looking to do?
As I said, we are about to put out an RFP for high-density housing in Santa Fe. We're also working, that's supplemented with a larger grant opportunity that we're working on with 3 other foundations and 3 other funders, which will be larger grants than any of us have ever done before. It'll be $300,000 a year to some group of nonprofits who are working with us to deal with things like zoning and regulation, NIMBYism, and a bunch of other things, not in my neighborhood, not in my backyard. We are currently looking at a deal up in Cuesta. So that's another sort of business opportunity, economic development opportunity. I think the bigger picture for us, and those are the things that are happening through the Santa Fe Community Foundation's own work, we're spending some time and stepping back and saying there are a couple of deals that we've done that haven't exactly fit well even in an afterthought kind of way, into the mission-driven lending, because I think we were so eager to sort of get this work underway and to try and get some deals done. So we're taking a little bit of pause, although we're looking at this Questa deal and another deal that we're trying to encourage to come into the pipeline, which is around food processing. I think the bigger opportunity is the New Mexico Impact Investment Collaborative. So I know I skipped through that at the end, but felt like I was talking too long, but our desire is we did an 18-month pilot project with that. We had dedicated staffing for it. The participants, the main participants at the table, paid a fee to be part of the New Mexico Impact Investing Collaborative that supported the staffing. And the idea was that the staff person would do due diligence for all of us. We all have our own stuff to do internally, stuff I need to do for my board, stuff that you would need to do. But is there a way that we could share some of that due diligence even at the highest level? And that worked near the end. So we've done the first of a two-part retreat with the Partners in the Collaborative. That was 2 weeks ago. As I said, the Kellogg Foundation is at that table with us and has been a large partner. We're really blessed to have the Kellogg Foundation as such a large presence in our state, and all of us need to work to make sure they stay here for the long run and to bring other national donors in. But they're paying for the analysis, so we'll have the second part of our retreat, and we expect a reboot next year with the purposes of, we've learned some lessons this year. As I said, we did this great deal in South Valley. That was the type of financing we wanted to do. So the future for us looks like an expanded table, bringing other people to the table. We, for example, at our foundation are working with our individual donor-advised fund holders, which of our $85 million in assets, about 43 million of that are individual philanthropists who open funds with us. Albuquerque Community Foundation has these, and a couple of the other community foundations do. We are creating a pool, an asset pool among our fund holders, so that we're bringing them into the mix as well, so that there's even additional capital from the community foundation that our fund holders are approving to go into the mix. So that's also part of the collaborative work that we're doing through that. So I think that's kind of where we're headed.
That's great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I'm asking the question, but any questions out there? David, so explain to us, and you know, if it's rude, I'm sorry, but so, I mean, is this a for-profit venture? Are you just a really nice guy that does this kind of stuff? How does this work? Are you a nonprofit, or tell us about that?
I'm a profit. I'm a consultant, as are many. The alternative funders is because we do it partly for marketing and partly as a reaction to the difficulty small businesses have to get money. Our mission with the alternative funders is anybody that has as their objective getting funding out to small business, we welcome them, and they're in three classes. They are actual lenders, of which Jose's one, where they actually get money into the pockets of people for various reasons. The second kind are service providers or indirect funders, which is someone like me. If I do my job right, my clients are going to get money, get more money. And then we have a third category that we call nonprofits, which is pretty much you folks. And I would say anybody that wants to be on our mailing list for the alternative funders, please drop a card up here. I've actually got to go see a client up in Albuquerque at 3:30. They're struggling right now. They are not paying attention to their funds. And so...
I was saying, you're going to have a hard time getting there by 3:30. You're going to have a hard time getting up to... Did you say Santa Fe, or...?
No, I said Albuquerque.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm no good at getting down here fast. But anyway, the alternative funders, we just did one the other day. The alternative funders will probably do one down here in Albuquerque after the first of the year. And I'm going to make mention of it. We're getting a lot of people that would like us to talk about the business of marijuana, because I come from Colorado, and we are getting a lot of people that expect it to be recreational open up. Well, that opens up a lot of business. So there are going to be a lot of business people that are going to need money, and they're going to need some expertise, so we're trying to aim for that. But we do it mostly just because, ultimately it helps us, but it helps the economy too.
Thank you. And we're going to have all the contact information on the website, so I'll make sure that everybody's information gets out there. Jose, can you tell us if any of those new market loan pools have been done in New Mexico yet? And how can people apply for some of those loans? I want to borrow money from Jose.
Right. Well, no, I'll just say this, because because I think some of these sessions oftentimes, the best part of them is the 10 minutes after, right? So no need to stretch it out, but if you have a project, right, that you think, you know, we might be able to help you with, and we're crafty, so come see us, and, you know, I'll stick around here for a few minutes after the session, but I think, you know, you guys might have some burning questions for one of us, but not having to hear all the answers to all the questions. Might be a good time to wrap up and kind of work the room a little bit.
Great.
I'd love to meet some folks individually.
Yeah, absolutely, I appreciate it. I mean, we're slated till 3:30. We'll just kind of close now and let everybody mingle or hang out. Just to let everybody know, we're going to be doing, I think it was an allusion, or somebody mentioned opportunity zones. So we're going to be doing an opportunity zone update in this room right after this session, so at 3:30. So if you're interested in opportunity zone, all things opportunity zones, I've been reading the rules for 7 days. I think I have it, I'm not sure. But I really want to thank everybody who joined us. I know that as a person who worked in finance at the state level, I'm really limited by the monies that how we can deploy the funds we have. So I really appreciate understanding alternatives and hopefully figuring out ways that we could all partner. So please join me in thanking our panelists today. Thank you very much.